Thanks, Hazel. Cool. So welcome to the Marketing Lifeline's Friendly Friday again, in conversation with like-minded entrepreneurs. I think that might be a better word than people who like to share and share alike. And today we are joined by Hazel Hardie from Whichword. So thank you so much for joining us, Hazel. I look forward to sharing with you and what you have to share with us.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me today.
It's a pleasure. And today we're going to be looking at something slightly different called proofreading. So not proof in the pudding, but rather let's look at the power of proofreading, because I think a lot of us want to steer away from that and we know better. So hopefully we've got some nice tips to learn from Hazel today as well. So just a quick bio to introduce Hazel. Hazel has been proofreading for more than 10 years. She started out when she was working in Dubai as the PA to a COO. She would proofread and format all monthly client reports that went out, and from there she began proofreading her stepfather's novel. And to just tell you, there's 10 of them so far, so maybe there's more to come. A friend's thesis and dissertation papers, and eventually joined an online freelance site where she began trying to earn a little bit of cash on the side to make a living. And then 2 years ago, she actually decided to leave the PA position and started putting together the plans to create her own company and moving back to South Africa only October last year, which I think was very brave on your part. Whichword was officially born. So welcome back to South Africa and welcome to Friendly Friday today. So let's go straight in. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you founded Whichword. I mean, we've basically just done a bit of an intro, but yeah, let us know your kind of history and kind of what made you want to do proofreading, because I think a lot of us may think that might be a very boring job.
Well, it probably goes back to when I was on holiday in the States, like 2005, I think it was. And I picked up a menu and I was like, oh my goodness, look at all these spelling mistakes. And it wasn't a case of American English versus British English. It was actual mistakes. I came back home and I told my family the story, and they were like, but Hazel, you've been doing that for years. Like you pick up these things, you notice mistakes. And I was like, really? And that was when I realized, wow, I actually have an eye for this. Didn't do anything about it at the time. I mean, I was very young and whatever. Yes. But a few years later, when I then started doing this proofreading in my job responsibilities, I was like, oh, actually, this is where it comes from. And realized that I have a natural eye for it. I've been told it's my superpower. So so yeah, it's something that I enjoy doing it. A lot of people hate sending me messages because then they're like, oh, Hazel's going to judge us. And my great pride when I post something on Facebook or any type of social media and I make a mistake. They're like, Hazel, there's a mistake on here.
And they tell you that. They make sure they tell you.
They love rubbing it in when I make a mistake. I'm like, shush, it's my personal media. This is not in my professional capacity.
Yeah. No, I completely hear you. I felt a bit the same as well, sending you stuff. I was like, I hope she's not going to proof this now. This is casual writing on WhatsApp, okay? This doesn't count.
I mean, I try not to judge.
Okay, so
go ahead.
No, finish up.
I was going to say, just in terms of the name of the business, it came down to I went online onto like a domain name website, and I realized that you could get things other than just .com or .co.za or .co.uk, and I found this one called .works, and I was like, that's really cool. And I started playing with names and everything, and I eventually then came up with Whichword Works, and I was like, that is so cool. Yeah. So that's the name of the business. That's obviously the website. So because that's what I do. I look for the right
word. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you'll obviously share with us, but even so, it's not just about you correcting the spelling, but also the context of the words and using different words. So let's maybe look a little bit about So previously on Friendly Friday, I mean, we actually kicked this off in February. So we've touched on a few topics in terms of content. So we've obviously looked at the relevancy of creating relevant content, and we had a guy actually on board telling us, you know, how to prepare to write a book, because obviously most entrepreneurs today want to write a book. So tell us a little bit about how you as a proofreader fit into this process of writing.
Okay, so generally I would be kind of the very last step. People can bring me on board as they go along. It's entirely a personal preference on their side. But generally, it's the very last step. Once they've written everything and they've gone through it, then I'll come on board and I will give it like a detailed, very detailed go through, and I read it at least twice. When I'm given any work to do, at least twice, and I go through and I check for, like you say, punctuation, spelling, grammar. That's the basic. That's just the standard proofreading.
Okay.
People can then choose to have the copy editing side of things, which is over and above. So it includes the punctuation, spelling, grammar, but it also takes things further. It takes things. When you're writing a fiction novel, for example, I'm checking the consistency. Is the timeline accurate? You know, if it starts off in summer and it ends a year later, does it end in summer a year later? Is the person's hair blonde all the way through? Is their name Hazel all the way through? Because I think every single fiction novel that I've ever read has at least one name that's incorrect. It's either completely changed or the spelling has changed. So it's checking for that kind of detail. I'm not necessarily the person that will come in and say this paragraph belongs here or this chapter belongs here. That's what an editor would do. And an editor would do that before I come in. So I really am literally the very last step. Yeah, and checking. So if I'm not looking at fiction work and I'm looking at academic papers or even business books, I'm checking things like the formatting. Are the headings, you know, if they're size 14 in Times New Roman, are they the same the whole way through? Are they spaced exactly the same? You know, are they in the center of the page all the way through? Checking all of that kind of stuff, checking that the fonts, the sizing, everything is exactly the same the whole way through. So it's really, I do a lot of detail, and like I say, I do it at least twice.
So do you have a checklist? To check what to check?
Yeah, so
I
do. So I'll sit, what I do is I kind of read through the whole thing from start to finish, and I've got a little notebook. And as I'm going, I'll make notes. Like if in chapter 1 I picked up something and a few chapters later, I'm like, oh, was that something weird in chapter 1? I'm not going to go back and try and find it in chapter 1. What I'll do is I'll make a note so that when I go through it a second time, I'm ticking off my notes to make sure that I've covered everything that I was unsure of as the book went through, or the academic paper or whatever.
Okay, sure. That is a lot of detail, and hence I asked, do you have a checklist? Because I think no matter who you are with that type of detail, and as you say, double checking and checking again. So just kind of bringing it down to kind of business owner level. I know you talk a lot about books and that, but I obviously proofreading, you also play a part in businesses. But tell us a little bit about the key benefits of proofreading and why people should actually look at it. You know, what are the benefits to either a business or a book, an author, or whatever it may be? What are the benefits of a proofreader?
I think one of the biggest benefits, whether you're an author of a fiction novel, a business novel, or you're a business owner, is that people don't like to do this job. You know, they, like you said at the very beginning, they think that it's okay. You know, they think that what they've done is right. And everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. Everybody makes a typo. Everybody adds in an apostrophe in the wrong place or a comma in the wrong place. And so the benefits of me is that I will come on board and I'm not emotionally connected to the writing in any way. So it's much easier for me to pick up those kinds of mistakes, because if you're the one who's written it, you know what you've wanted to get on that piece of paper. So the mistakes, kind of the typo kind of mistakes, those silly, insignificant kind of mistakes, you overlook those when you're the writer. You know, the bigger things like the grammar and the punctuation and tenses and stuff like that, then obviously those are a little bit more detailed, and maybe somebody who's writing it isn't going to pick that up. But yeah, you know, as a proofreader, I'm able to pick up those inconsistencies. It's even in report writing. Reports are generally written in past tense. So, you know, I'm making sure that all sentences are past tense. Whereas sometimes somebody might accidentally switch to present tense, or if it's an Afrikaans person writing it in English, there's always going to be tense irregularities just because of the two different languages and the way they structured so differently. So it's picking things up like that, that I do. And like I say, because I have such a natural eye to it, it really comes easy to me. And, you know, it helps take the pressure and the time off somebody in a business. You know, you write the stuff, that's where your focus is. That's what you know what you're doing. You put all of your heart and soul into that and give it to me to fix up and to check for all the little silly things that you don't have the time to look for.
Yeah, because I think, as we also briefly discussed, you know, it's also that first impression. And I mean, especially as a bigger corporate, I guess, putting out, you know, spelling mistakes and stuff. I mean, I've read a few books where there's been a few spelling mistakes, and I'm like, it's okay. I will give them that, because out of these 366 pages, but it's just because we've got a different eye. I think coming in, when you write something, I know, I'm sure when I write stuff, there's always spelling mistakes, but when you reading someone else's stuff, it's a fresh eye, and it does allow for us to pick up on those things, and as you say, to make that first impression, because there's nothing worse than putting something incorrect out into the marketplace. So
yeah, and it's difficult to come back from a first impression like that. You know, when everybody is so quick to judge these days, we're very judgmental. So, you know, you see somebody making a spelling mistake and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to use their service. Like, I don't care how good they are. You know, if they can't take the time to just quickly, even if you don't want to hire a proofreader and pay for it, just take the extra little bit of time to reread it yourself. But yeah, so first impressions are very, very important.
Cool. So just, I don't really have access to Facebook to look, but if there's anyone else that's joined us, we've got Hazel Hardie from Whichword, and today we're talking about the power of proofreading. So yes, probably not a very interesting topic for a lot of us. We're like, oh, we hate proofreading, but we're trying to educate you to tell you just how important it is, because what you put out there is what people are going to interpret in terms of your business. So just get the basics right, and that's what Hazel does in terms of her proofreading. So let's then jump on to the next exciting topic, which I always like, is the 3 top tips. So can you share with us perhaps maybe 3 top tips that all business owners should consider, or at least something to use in their own capacity when writing content to also help them proof? Because maybe in some cases it's not always possible for them to get a proofreader. How and what should people look at, because it is so important for people to do this process?
Okay, so something like the program Grammarly, which you can get a paid version or a free version. It's online. You just go into Google, look up Grammarly. That is probably one of your best programs that you can use. What you do is you pop the sentence in and you ask Grammarly, is my sentence correct? And it will then it will shoot back a sentence. Like if there's any changes that need to be done, it will shoot back and give you help on that. It also checks for spelling. So definitely I would recommend Grammarly as something that people could use. Rereading it. Reread what you send out. And when you do that, try read it out loud. It's very different just reading something in your head as opposed to reading it out loud. And there is actually a feature on Word called Read Aloud. So after you've typed something, you can, and it's free on Word. You type what you need to have typed and you put on Read Aloud, and the computer then reads back to you what you've written.
Yeah, because you're right, because then you go, that doesn't sound right, does it?
Correct. Yeah. So either read it yourself out loud, or you know, if you've got the time to look at finding that program, then you can do that just on Word. And then the third top tip is definitely, if you have the means and if you have the time, is to bring on a proofreader, hire a proofreader, because proofreaders are able to look for the things that Grammarly and spell check will not pick up. You know, there are things that they're just a program. There are things that they're not going to be able to pick up. You take, for example, a sentence where all the words are spelled absolutely correctly, but you've put a wrong word in there. Generally, spell check is not going to pick that up. Grammarly might, but you're not guaranteed. So for, you know, if you really want 100% accuracy, then you need to go the proofreader way. But if you don't have the means for that, or you don't have the time for that, then you need to look at things like Grammarly or reading it out loud. Okay,
awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I've got investing in Grammarly. I personally use it myself. Sometimes I question it, but I guess that's where Hazel would come in. And rereading it yourself, I love that tip. Never thought about that. And isn't it crazy? I mean, we're kind of working from home in our own capacity. So what's wrong with reading something aloud? I just spoke to somebody this morning to say how I miss people engagement. So maybe that's what I need to do, is I need to read my content aloud. And then
read it to your cat, to your dogs, or whatever, you know, so you don't feel the full reading it to yourself.
True. And then, well, I'll just put my mask on, and then nobody will see my lip movement, but they'll hear me. And then get a professional proofreader if it's that important to you as a business, or that big a document, or it's a company profile and things are really critical, you know, that's the point where I also wouldn't rely on the likes of Grammarly, and then rather getting a professional proofreader in to help you. So just to finish off, I think this is a very interesting one for myself, because I think it's maybe not so unique as I think it may be, and it's probably going to be something that I'm quite familiar with. But I wanted to ask the question is, what is the most common mistake that you find that you go, oh, not again? Or, you know, just to think that, is this really, do you know, can people just not get this right? What is your most common mistake that you find?
So I mean, there's a few. I've picked on 3. Mixing up tenses, like I've touched on earlier. It's the whole Afrikaans to English misunderstandings, because the languages are so different and they have such different grammar rules. And some people who are not very strong in English don't 100% understand the rules. So mixing up tenses is definitely one of the ones at the top of the list. Then changing names when you're in fiction writing. Like I said, I think every single novel that I've ever read has had some kind of mistake in that. So that's a very big one. And the incorrect use of apostrophes, especially in plurals. Yeah.
I think that's me.
Yeah, a lot of people like to add an apostrophe S in a plural, especially when it's numbers. Like, so, you know, if you've got like 1970s and you've got the numerals 1970, people will almost always put an apostrophe S, which is incorrect. But people don't know that. So
that is, I've also got not a bad eye for looking at content and picking up things, sometimes to the point that it's a bit irritating. But apostrophes, I will come to you any day, because I can still, like, is it hers? Even when I sent it to Hazel's apostrophe, is it, she owns it? Can I remember what's it for? Oh, yeah, no, that is a tough one. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, they're a little bit tough.
Yeah, so when we think it's something as simple as a little apostrophe, it can cause havoc, and at least it gives Hazel something to do. So it takes the headache out of our head and gives Hazel something to do. Awesome.
And I love doing it.
Well, I think this has been very insightful for myself, even from a marketing perspective. You know, understanding exactly what a proofreader does and how you kind of pull all that awesome content in so many different platforms, as you've mentioned. You know, it's not just a book, you know, it's the financial reports, the company reports, it's the profiles, it's, you know, it's maybe just a formal letter, you know, to an investor, whatever it may be, that one needs to consider what it is what they put out there. So thank you so much for sharing with us again today, Hazel. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, and I wish you well, and I look forward to chatting with you again. So yeah, just until next week, we'll be joined by Ash Pile from Make Sense Global, and we'll be talking about shifting your business to create opportunities in the current times that we find ourselves in. So something quite specific to us, and I think that's going to be an interesting chat. So join us again next week at 12 p.m. same time. And please, if you did like the video, give us a comment. I'm happy to get back to you in a bit and or share it for us at a later stage. I'd appreciate that. And then, yeah, just thanks again to Hazel, and I'll see everyone same time, same place next week. Cheers.
Hi.